Most people are playing the wrong game. They work harder, they save more, they follow the rules, and they still end up exactly where they started. Broke, stressed, and wondering why the system never seems to work for them. But what if the problem isn't how hard you're working? What if the problem is that you're playing a game designed for you to lose? Niccolò Machiavelli, the most feared political strategist in history, understood something that the poor never do and the powerful never forget. Life is not a moral exercise. It is a game of strategy, and only those who understand the rules can bend them. Today, I'm going to show you the 3 power games that Machiavelli's philosophy reveals. Games that, once you start playing, will make it nearly impossible for you to struggle financially ever again. You cannot afford to skip this. Let's be honest with each other for a moment. The reason most people struggle financially isn't because they're lazy. It isn't because they're unintelligent. It isn't even because they're unlucky. It's because they were handed a map that was drawn by someone who never wanted them to reach the destination. School taught you to be obedient. Your job taught you to be replaceable. Society taught you that wanting more is greedy. And while you were busy following all those rules, someone else was rewriting the game in their favor. That someone understood Machiavelli. Machiavelli wasn't just a political philosopher. He was a ruthless observer of human nature. He studied how power flows, how wealth concentrates, and why certain people rise while others, equally talented, equally hardworking, stay stuck. And buried inside his most dangerous ideas are 3 games. 3 frameworks for thinking, acting, and positioning yourself in the world that separate those who achieve financial freedom from those who spend their entire lives chasing it. By the time this video ends, you will see the world differently. You will see the game, and more importantly, you'll finally know how to play it. Stay with me, because the first game is one that almost no one is willing to talk about. Here is the first thing Machiavelli ever made clear. It doesn't matter what you are. It matters what people think you are. Read that again. He wrote that a prince need not possess every admirable quality, but he must absolutely appear to possess them. Because in the world of power, perception is not saint reality. Perception is currency. And this is the first game that separates people who achieve financial freedom from people who struggle financially their entire lives. The perception game. Think about 2 people with identical skills. Same intelligence, same work ethic, same experience. One of them walks into a room and commands it. People listen when they speak. Opportunities find them. Investors trust them. Clients choose them, sometimes before they've even said a word. The other one is invisible. What's the difference? It isn't talent, it's positioning. It's the story they're telling the world through their appearance, their language, their associations, their confidence, and the way they frame their value. The wealthy understand that the market doesn't pay for the truth of who you are. It pays for the perception of the value you provide. Look at every luxury brand on earth. A Rolex keeps time no better than a $50 watch. A Ferrari gets you to the same destination as a Honda. But people pay 20, 50, 100 times more, not for the function, but for the feeling, for the perception. This is not dishonesty, this is strategy. But here's what most people never realize. You are already playing the perception game. You've been playing it your whole life. The question is whether you're playing it consciously or letting others define the story for you. When you dress carelessly, when you undercharge for your services, when you apologize before making a point, when you shrink yourself in rooms full of opportunity, you are telling the world a story, and the world is listening. Machiavelli would say, the man who does not control his own narrative will always be controlled by someone else's. So how do you start winning the perception game? First, audit the story you're currently telling. Look at how you present yourself professionally, digitally, socially. Ask yourself, does this positioning reflect someone who has achieved financial freedom or someone who is still struggling financially? Second, invest in perception before it's comfortable. This is counterintuitive, and this is exactly why most people never do it. They wait until they feel successful to look successful. But the game works in reverse. You position at the level you're moving toward, not the level you're currently at. Third, control your associations. Machiavelli understood that power is transferred through proximity. When you surround yourself with ambitious, successful, strategically minded people, that perception transfers to you. When you surround yourself with complaint, mediocrity, and stagnation, that transfers too. Your network is your net worth. But more than that, your network is your perceived identity. This next part is critical, so don't look away. The perception game isn't about faking it, it's about becoming so deliberate about the story you're telling that the world has no choice but to respond to you differently. And when the world responds to you differently, opportunities change, income changes, your entire trajectory changes. People who've mastered Machiavelli's first game don't wait to be discovered. They create the conditions for discovery. They engineer the perception that makes opportunity inevitable. Start playing the perception game consciously, deliberately, strategically, and you will never struggle financially the way you do right now. That I promise you. There's a myth that the self-made person exists, the lone genius, the solo entrepreneur who built an empire through sheer will and intelligence. The idea that if you're talented enough, disciplined enough, driven enough, you can rise entirely on your own. Niccolo Machiavelli dismantled this illusion 500 years ago, arguing that one of the gravest mistakes a ruler could make was believing he could stand alone. Even the most powerful and intelligent leader, he observed, eventually falls, not always to external enemies, but to the isolation created by arrogance. This is the second power game, the alliance game, and it is one of the most underestimated forces behind achieving true financial freedom. The financially struggling mindset assumes that hard work alone will eventually speak for itself, that results will naturally attract recognition, opportunity, and reward. But Machiavelli understood a harsher truth. Results mean very little without allies to amplify them. In reality, wealth does not consistently flow toward the most talented individual. It flows toward the most connected, the most trusted, and the most strategically positioned within networks of influence. A mediocre product backed by a powerful distribution system will outperform a brilliant product that no one knows exists, and a good idea in the hands of a well-connected individual will almost always outpace a great idea held by someone isolated. This isn't pessimism, it's how systems of power and money actually function. What most people fail to grasp is that alliances are not built on charm, luck, or surface-level networking. They are constructed through deliberate strategy and mutual value creation. Machiavelli emphasized that the strongest alliances are not based on emotional attachment, but on aligned interests. When both parties benefit, the relationship becomes durable and resilient. When only one side gains, the connection weakens and eventually collapses. This leads to a critical question: who benefits from your success? If the answer is only you, then you are attempting to play a multiplayer game alone, and that is a losing position. Those who break free from financial struggle understand that success is not an individual pursuit, but a networked one. Their focus shifts from personal gain to building ecosystems of value, relationships, partnerships, and circles where growth is shared and reinforced. This is what Machiavelli described as the true architecture of power, not a solitary tower, but a web. Interconnected, mutually reinforcing, and far more difficult to dismantle. To begin building this, you must become intentional. Identify a small group of individuals who are already moving in the direction you want to go. Approach them not as someone seeking favors, but as someone offering value. Before asking what they can do for you, determine what you can do for them that others cannot. Solve problems they already have. Contribute in ways that make your presence useful, not burdensome. Machiavelli noted that generosity, when applied strategically, creates loyalty, and loyalty, in the world of power and wealth, is often more valuable than money itself. Give knowledge, give time, give introductions, and give recognition, not randomly, but with purpose. However, this game has a darker dimension that cannot be ignored. Not all alliances are beneficial. Some are exploitative, built by individuals who seek your resources, energy, or ideas without any intention of reciprocation. These are not always obvious. To identify them, you must observe behavior over time, not words in the moment. Watch for patterns. The person who consistently asks but never gives, who supports you privately but undermines you publicly, who agrees until alignment becomes inconvenient. These are not allies, they are liabilities. Machiavelli advised leaders to understand not just their allies, but their enemies, because sometimes the greatest obstacle to your progress is not an obvious opponent, but someone positioned close enough to influence your direction. This is why auditing your relationships becomes essential. Strengthen the connections that create momentum, remove or distance from those that drain it, and continuously build new alliances with clarity and intention. In the end, power is never held alone, and neither is wealth. Every empire, every system of influence, every path to financial freedom is supported by a network, visible or hidden. The only real question is whether the network around you is accelerating your growth or quietly holding you back. We are living in the age of the instant. Instant gratification, instant results, instant success stories packaged into 60-second clips that make it seem like empires are built overnight. But this obsession with speed is quietly destroying more financial futures than almost anything else. Because the third power game, the one Niccolo Machiavelli considered the most decisive, demands the opposite approach, the ability to slow down when everyone else is rushing. This is the long game, and it separates those who merely chase money from those who actually achieve financial freedom. Machiavelli wrote that fortune favors the bold, but it destroys the reckless. And the distinction between those two is everything. Boldness is calculated, timed, and strategic. Recklessness is emotional, impatient, and reactive. Most people who struggle financially fall into the second category without realizing it. They prioritize short-term wins over long-term outcomes, choosing quick money at the cost of larger opportunities. They abandon paths that could have led to something meaningful simply because results weren't immediate. Their financial decisions are driven by present emotions rather than future vision, and over time, that pattern compounds into stagnation. Someone who understands the long game sees reality differently. Think of it like chess. The amateur focuses on the next move or two, constantly reacting, constantly surprised, always on the defensive. The master, however, sees 10 or 20 moves ahead. Every action, even those that appear like sacrifices, is part of a larger sequence designed to lead to a specific end. Financial freedom works the same way. It is not one decision, one investment, or one breakthrough moment. It is a sequence of decisions made consistently over time, often long before the results are visible to anyone else. In practice, playing the long game means being selective rather than reactive. It means not chasing every opportunity, but choosing the ones that align with a larger plan. It means investing in things that compound, skills, relationships, knowledge, and assets that grow in value over time. The people who win this game understand compounding at a deep level, not just financially, but structurally. Skills compound into opportunities. Opportunities compound into networks. Networks compound into leverage, and leverage compounds into wealth. Each disciplined decision you make today improves the quality of decisions available to you tomorrow. What most people fail to realize is that the long game is not primarily a financial challenge. It is a psychological one. It requires tolerance for delayed gratification, for uncertainty, and for appearing unsuccessful while your foundation is still being built. It requires the ability to endure the long, uncomfortable middle, the phase where effort is high, sacrifice is real, and visible results are minimal. Machiavelli made this clear. The person who cannot endure discomfort in service of a larger outcome will always be controlled by the person who can. And this is exactly where most people break, not because they lack intelligence or ambition, but because they cannot tolerate the gap between where they are and where they want to be. To play the long game effectively, you need structure. First, define your endpoint with precision. Not vague ideas like, I want to be rich, but specific outcomes. What financial freedom looks like for you in numbers, lifestyle, and timeline. Clarity makes sacrifice tolerable. Second, build systems instead of relying on motivation. Motivation fluctuates. Systems persist. Automated investing, consistent learning routines, disciplined tracking, these create momentum regardless of how you feel. Just as Machiavelli designed systems of governance that could outlast individual rulers, your financial systems should be strong enough to carry you through your worst days. Third, measure the right variables. Most people track outcomes too early and become discouraged when results don't appear. Instead, focus on inputs, consistency, decision quality, and learning rate. These are leading indicators of future success. By tracking them, you maintain momentum during the phase when external validation is absent. And finally, protect your vision. The world is full of people who will, intentionally or not, try to pull you back toward their level. They will label your ambition unrealistic, encourage you to play it safe, and highlight risks while ignoring potential. Machiavelli understood that those who pursue extraordinary outcomes must be willing to be misunderstood, because the moves that create success rarely look rational in the moment they are made. Playing the long game is not glamorous. It is quiet, patient, and often invisible, but it is also the most reliable path to lasting success. Because in the end, financial freedom is not awarded to those who want it the most. It is achieved by those who are willing to stay in the game the longest, making disciplined, strategic moves long after everyone else has given up. There is a deeper layer beneath all of Machiavelli's power games, a metagame that quietly governs the others. The control game. Niccolo Machiavelli understood something most people overlook. The true source of power is not force, and it is not wealth alone. It is control over information. The one who controls the narrative, the intelligence, and the flow of knowledge ultimately controls the system itself. In today's world, this principle is more relevant than ever, and it explains why so many people continue to struggle financially without understanding why. At the core of this game is information asymmetry, the gap between what you know and what others know. Every major fortune in history has been built on some form of this edge. The individual who sees a shift before it becomes obvious, who understands a pattern before it is named, who positions themselves before the crowd moves. That person wins. Whether it's a trader anticipating a market change, an entrepreneur identifying an unmet demand, or a professional recognizing where value will flow next, these outcomes are not luck. They are the result of deliberate information strategy. The average person operates at the opposite end. They consume what everyone else consumes, think what everyone else thinks, and act when everyone else acts. They are reactive rather than anticipatory, always a step behind the movement of opportunity. But what most people fail to realize is that information advantage is not reserved for elites. It is built, it is developed through disciplined curiosity, focused attention, and a willingness to engage with complexity rather than avoid it. Machiavelli himself is proof of this. He did not inherit power. He studied it obsessively. He read, observed, documented, and analyzed human behavior and political systems until he built a mental model so precise that it still guides thinkers centuries later. That same approach can be applied today in any field. Study what others ignore. Learn the history of your industry, because patterns repeat, and those who understand cycles can anticipate shifts. Build relationships with people slightly ahead of you, not for status, but for perspective. Train your mind to sit with difficult, nuanced information, because real edges are rarely simple. At the same time, control what you consume. Most people flood their minds with noise, information that distracts, agitates, and fragments their focus, and mistake it for awareness. In reality, it is a form of surrender. Machiavelli would immediately recognize modern media as a system that thrives on keeping people reactive and emotionally engaged, because a distracted mind is easier to influence. If you are serious about financial freedom, you must become intentional about information, what you allow in, what you filter out, what you share, and what you keep private. Because in the end, information is not just knowledge, it is leverage. And in any system of power or wealth, leverage is the force that moves everything. Machiavelli warned that anyone who relies entirely on fortune will collapse the moment circumstances shift. But the individual who builds real capability, deep, undeniable competence, can survive and adapt under any condition. This is the fifth power game, the mastery game, and it forms the foundation beneath all the others. We live in a time where shortcuts are constantly marketed as solutions. The idea that financial freedom can be hacked, bypassed, or accelerated without depth has become a dominant belief. But this mindset produces fragility, not strength, because across every era, every industry, and every economic system, one principle remains constant. The person who becomes exceptionally skilled, genuinely difficult to replace, is always rewarded. Those who struggle financially often fail here, not because they lack ability, but because they refuse to stay in one place long enough to develop mastery. They jump from one pursuit to another, searching for something easier, faster, or more immediately rewarding. But mastery does not operate on short timelines. It is built slowly, often invisibly, through repeated effort and sustained focus. And then, at a certain threshold, the value of that mastery compounds rapidly. If you look at people who have achieved lasting financial stability, a pattern emerges. They are not scattered, they are deep. They have committed to a domain and developed a level of expertise that sets them apart. That depth becomes leverage. It creates opportunities, commands higher value, and builds resilience against uncertainty. Machiavelli himself embodied this. His understanding of power, politics, and human behavior was so refined that his work remains relevant centuries later. He did not skim the surface, he went deeper than those around him. And that is the real strategy. Not to be the best in the world, but to be the best in your world. The unique intersection of your skills, your environment, and your relationships. This is where the real advantage lies. The individuals who create disproportionate value are often those who combine disciplines, who operate at intersections others overlook, who solve problems most people don't even recognize clearly. Your task is to find that intersection and commit to it with intensity. Mastery also demands a shift in how you interpret discomfort. Difficulty is not a signal to stop. It is a signal that you are at the edge of your growth. When something becomes easy, progress has slowed. The edge, where things are challenging, uncertain, and mentally demanding, is where capability expands. And the people who embrace that edge consistently are the ones who eventually separate themselves. Machiavelli refined his mastery through constant observation and reflection. He didn't just experience events, he analyzed them, wrote about them, tested his understanding. You must do the same. Don't just participate in your field, study it deeply, articulate what you learn, and refine your thinking through expression. Because clarity is not just understanding, it is power. And in the long run, the marketplace does not reward those who try everything. It rewards those who become exceptional at something. We've covered 5 power games today, the same underlying forces that Niccolo Machiavelli identified as the real architecture behind wealth and power. The perception game, where you take control of how the world sees you. The alliance game, where you build networks that multiply your influence. The long game, where patience becomes your strategic weapon. The control game, where information becomes leverage. And the mastery game, where depth of skill makes you impossible to ignore. These are not shortcuts or surface-level tricks. They are structural principles that have shaped outcomes for centuries, and they will continue to do so long after this moment. The reality is simple, even if it's uncomfortable. People who struggle financially are often not stuck because of effort or intelligence, but because they are playing a game they don't understand. They follow visible rules while invisible systems determine the outcome. And when you don't see the system, you cannot influence it. You can only react to it. Now you see it. But seeing the game is not enough. Machiavelli's most important insight wasn't just about understanding power. It was about acting on that understanding. Because knowledge without execution is indistinguishable from ignorance. The difference between those who achieve financial freedom and those who don't is not awareness alone. It is the decision to move differently, to think differently, and to operate with intention. You don't need perfection. You don't need every step mapped out. What you need is a shift, from passive to strategic, from reactive to deliberate. The board has always been in motion. The pieces have always been moving. The only real question has never changed. Are you directing the game or being moved by it? Machiavelli answered that question in his own life. Now it's yours to answer. If this gave you a new lens, not just motivation, but a way to actually think and act, then stay with it. Because understanding the game once is not enough. Mastery comes from applying it, refining it, and living it consistently. And the people who do that are the ones who don't just survive the system. They shape it.